Airline operators in the country are saying they have been paying the cost of subsidizing aviation fuel, and with the current price, they cannot operate safely with the 50,000 naira base for airfares. That position was echoed by the Director General of the Nigeria Civil Aviation Authority, Captain Muda Nuhu, who was speaking during a meeting with the Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives over the scarcity and high cost of aviation fuel.
The Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives and some members meet with airline operators and regulatory agencies of the aviation sector. The meeting is to unravel the circumstances surrounding the increase in airfares brought about by scarcity and increase in aviation fuel.
1 year ago, he was selling...
The Director General of the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority and the GMD of the NNPC brief on how dire the situation is.
Considering the cost of air ticket now, the base of 15 naira, the airline industry cannot survive. It's either we shut them down because they cannot generate enough revenue to operate safely, sir. I'm not even talking about cancellations and delays. I'm talking about safety of flight operations.
Today, the landing cost of air ticket today in the country today is 418 naira today. I just checked that with my colleague here. What would it be? The price that we have no control, that's what the international price is. It is 418 naira today.
The airline operators are disturbed by the hike in aviation fuel from 190 to 670 naira per litre.
We wanted to shut that, but when we look back, with the benefit of hindsight, what the legislation did for airlines, what the presidency did for airlines, we decided to sacrifice for this country. On this table, you find 2 Nigerian patrons because we are subsidizing what each and every one of you are using in flying. But we cannot continue. We cannot last the next 72 hours doing that.
We are now beginning to compromise even in our safety. All of us fly here. All of us fly here. Nobody, if you tell somebody to take cab, go by road to Maiduguri, he will not go. All of us fly here. So why are we trying to compromise our safety? It's a critical issue. Who is bringing this fuel? And what price are they bringing? Somebody has to regulate them.
Attention turns to the Consumer Protection Council, which is accused of not doing its job.
Our intervention was forced to other airlines that they cannot coordinate.
Do you have the communication?
Well, it was online. We put it out.
Have the communication?
I do not have it here, but the airlines do not dispute that they received an order. Every airline here received an order from the FCCPC.
Who would be doing business that will have this advocate increase and maintain the same price if it's their own business?
No,
honest.
And we understand that, right, Honorable.
And that's why I'm asking you, you as an agent of government, you are supposed to be concerned about the price, you are supposed to monitor, so you are failing your duty.
Respectfully, sir.
It's okay, thank you.
A GMD, whoever is responsible, whether regulatory, supervisory, authority, whatever it is, you know what the law is. And you know the law better than all of us here. In fact, you drop the process.
The lawmakers are concerned about the continued price increase, as well as the reason why marketers are insisting on upfront cash payment. The marketers are to appear before the committee subsequently for further investigation. Terry Ikumi, Channels Television News.
And now to court stories. The Federal High Court in Abuja has ordered the Ebonyi State Governor and his deputy to vacate their seats. The court's verdict was based on the grounds that the People's Democratic Party (PDP) won the March 2019 governorship election and not its candidate. And having defected to the All Progressives Congress, Governor Dave Umahi and his deputy Eric Igwe cannot transfer the mandate of the PDP to the APC.
The atmosphere in the courtroom did nothing to suggest the outcome of the suit filed by the People's Democratic Party against Governor Dave Umahi over his defection to the All Progressives Congress. Lawyers of the parties involved in the case, as well as supporters of the governor, were present in court. Delivering judgments, the presiding judge, Justice Iyang Ekwo, explains that the defection of the governor and his deputy is illegal and unconstitutional. The judge held that the votes that brought them to office belonged to the PDP and not transferable to the APC. In a separate judgment, the judge also ordered the Speaker of the Ebonyi State House of Assembly and 17 other lawmakers to vacate their seats in the state's legislature. The governor's team faults the judgment.
It's very, very unfortunate that this type of judgment can come up. The Supreme Court has ruled and said there is no provision against the defection of the president, vice president, governor, or deputy governor. So, is the court making a judgment different from that of the Supreme Court? It is obvious. All the issues we raised were carpeted.
This is a clear case of travesty of justice. Jurisdiction. The State High Court had made a pronouncement on this matter, saying that the Constitution has no provision for defection, or has not made it an offense for a governor to defect from a party to the other. And I'm surprised that the Federal High Court here did not cite any provision of the Constitution.
But the PDP Council insists that the judgment was on course.
Well, this is a very epochal judgment. It has settled an issue that has been thorny in Nigeria's constitutional law over the years. So many people believe that when a governor defects, that there is no constitutional effect. But this judgment has been able to show that, in fact, it has the same consequences as a member of the House of Assembly defecting, especially in view of the judgment which was relied on, that the judgment of the Supreme Court in Wada and Bello, Faleke, and the INEC, which show that votes belong to political party and not to the candidates. Now, with that, nobody who defects to a minority party can expect to remain in office. I think this judgment has gone far to settle it.
The governor is hoping to upturn the judgment as he heads to the Court of Appeal to appeal the judgment.
Meanwhile, Governor Dave Umahi has appealed the Federal High Court judgment which sacked him and his deputy Eric Igwe from office over defection from the People's Democratic Party to the ruling All Progressives Congress. Earlier, the governor had reacted to the judgment, saying Justice Inyang Ekwo lacks the powers to remove him from office and has put the judiciary on trial by that judgment.
I've listened to the judgment of Ekwo, and it's very obvious that he was on a mission. He was making all efforts to upturn the rulings of the Supreme Court and Appeal Courts on issues like this. We have had the rumors before now that he was determined to give judgment against all known laws and the Constitution, first to embarrass APC, two, to embarrass the federal government. For me, I do not feel worried, but I feel so sorry for the judiciary. The executives may have problems, the legislature may have problems, but the moment justice could be purchased, then we are in trouble in this country. And the ruling this afternoon is a clear evidence that this country is in trouble. And let me tell you that this same judge has over 10 cases against Ebonyi State government with him. And you can imagine what he's going to rule. We have petitioned him to NJC, and we will follow it up at all costs to ensure that this man is brought to justice. I want you to disregard the judgment. It is null and void. There is a substituting judgment in Zamfara State, and there is also a judgment in Ebonyi State. So we've chosen the one to obey. We will not obey his ruling. We will obey the ruling of a competent court of equal level that says you cannot sue a governor
Lawmakers in the House of Representatives have made a U-turn and rescinded their decisions on 3 gender-based bills on the constitution amendment process. This comes a week after legislators voted against the bills, which are now to be recommitted for consideration and will be part of the second batch of constitution amendment to be presented in the coming weeks.
Plenary commences in the Green Chamber, and lawmakers immediately go into an executive session.
Executive session.
When the doors are opened, it is clear that an important conversation has just been had.
Last week, the House voted on the constitutional amendment, and there are issues arising therefrom, and the House, in its wisdom, has decided to take a course of action for the good of the country.
Following public outcry and constant protests by women and civil society organizations over the 5 women bills which were rejected by the National Assembly, the Speaker announces that 3 of the bills are to be recommitted and reconsidered.
After the recession, release them on the next set of amendments coming up. I believe, Deputy Speaker, in the next 4 weeks, the Constitution, I believe under Section 5, allows the House to regulate its own procedure. And we will be relying on the provision of the Constitution to harmonize the differences between us and the Senate.
Both chambers had voted against constitution bills to provide for 35% affirmative action for women in political party administration, special seats for women in national and state houses of assembly, allow women take up indigenship of their husband's state after 5 years, as well as to allow foreign women take up citizenship of their Nigerian husbands. Reacting to the U-turn by the House, the highest-ranking woman in the House of Representatives is hopeful that the leadership of the House would lobby the Senate to follow suit.
The leadership, like the presiding officer, should talk with the Senate because they have to meet. Of course, the Speaker has to speak with the Senate President because this is the right thing to do. It's not about anybody. It's about our nation. It's about the ridiculous nature of failure of those bills to pass.
She explains why the bill on special seats was not recommitted.
They believe that INEC had concluded all the processes and procurement for 2023 general elections.
The bill to provide for a minimum of 35% for women in ministerial and commissioner nominees was, however, not mentioned. The bill was among the 5 women bills which failed last week when it was not passed by the Senate, although the House had passed it at 20%. Terry Ikumi, Channels Television News.
As the war in Ukraine rages, more Nigerians trapped in the conflict continue to make their way back home. The latest are 123 citizens evacuated from Poland, where they had fled after Russia invaded Ukraine. They arrived at the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport, Abuja, aboard Air Peace, after which they were taken through the usual procedure of documentation and COVID-19 testing.
Another batch of Nigerian evacuees from Ukraine arrived at the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport, Abuja, at about 1:20 a.m. There are 123, including an infant, and they are welcomed by a joint government team.
Thank God for your safety and for God's guidance that you've arrived here in Abuja safely. We would also like to assure you of your comfort and safety throughout the process of receiving you here at the airport.
Inside the hall, they are documented. They also undergo COVID-19 testing. Some of them shared their experiences while in Ukraine.
It was like a dream. We woke up hearing sounds of bomb and we thought we were dreaming.
Like I and my friends trekked from Lviv to medical border for 13 hours. We left Lviv around, we started trekking around 8 p.m. and we arrived medical border at 9 a.m. in the morning.
We were just disoriented and we had to stand for like 3 days on the train before we arrived in the border of Poland and went into Poland.
They also have some advice for Nigerians.
As youth in Nigeria, we should always, stay in peace. We should avoid anything that causes discrimination. We should avoid anything that causes fight and all the rest. No courtesan. These things, they are bad.
Each of the evacuees is handed a 100 United States dollars and a SIM card to facilitate their transportation and communication. More than 5,000 Nigerians, mostly students, were caught up in the Ukrainian crisis. The government hopes to evacuate those willing to return as soon as possible. These evacuees have stories to tell. The bitter experiences, the devastating effect of the crisis in Ukraine all linger on their minds. They are happy to return home, but they do not feel fulfilled that they are not back with their certificates. At the moment, 1,208 Nigerians have been evacuated from Ukraine, and in days to come, many more will be evacuated. Emperor Simon, Channels Television News.
And finally on News Round, the United Nations says the number of refugees who have fled Ukraine had surged past 2 million. The organization describes the flight as one of the fastest exoduses in modern times.
Ukrainian officials say civilians are being evacuated from the besieged areas of Irpin, near the capital Kyiv, and northeastern Sumy. It comes after Russia declared another ceasefire and said a string of humanitarian corridors have been opened. Moscow says evacuees will now be allowed to travel to safer places in Ukraine after Kyiv rejected an earlier plan to funnel civilians to Russia and Belarus. However, Ukrainian officials say an evacuation route of the southern city of Mariupol has come under fire. In the past few days, several evacuation plans have collapsed amid continued Russian attacks. Officials say at least 21 civilians, including 2 children, were killed in a Russian airstrike on a residential street in Sumy late on Monday. The bodies were recovered by emergency services early on Tuesday in searches that are ongoing. The UN Human Rights Chief has called for civilians trapped in active hostilities in numerous areas of Ukraine to be able to leave safely.
Since the Council urgent debate, the number of civilian casualties has continued to grow. I'm deeply concerned about civilians trapped in active hostilities in numerous areas, and I urge all parties to take effective action to enable all civilians, including those in situations of vulnerability, to safely leave areas affected by conflict.
According to the United Nations, the number of people fleeing Russia's offensive has reached 2 million. The UN says it's the fastest exodus in modern times. More than half have headed to neighboring Poland, while Hungary and Slovakia have welcomed in excess of 190,000 and 140,000 people respectively. And on sanctions, Moscow has threatened to close a major gas pipeline, the Nord Stream pipeline, to Germany, as Western powers weigh a ban on Russian oil. British oil giant Shell has also announced that it will stop buying Russian crude and withdraw from involvement in the country's hydrocarbons.
And we hope more people who have suddenly assumed refugee status as a result of the Ukraine crisis will find relief. very soon. And with that, we wrap up News Round and Channels Television. Thank you for watching. I am Bukola Samuel Wemimo. Bye for now.